is the industry leader in both service and unique events in the TCG arena. Whether it's running the largest community-run tournaments for Flesh and Blood or providing service with a generosity that is unique to the Realm games, you can count on the Realm for an unforgettable experience. Check out their website at realmgamingnetwork.com for details about their $50,000 Flesh and Blood tournament circuit happening all across North America. But check out everything else going on at the Realm, including tournaments for all kinds of other experiences. And just for you, ISP listeners, use the code INSTANT5, that's INSTANT 5, to get 5% off your checkout when you're buying from the Realm.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Instant Speed Podcast, number 123. This is brought to you by the Realm Gaming Network, and our guest today is long awaited. Finally, we have the arrival of, I said, probably one of the most pronounced personalities in Flesh and Blood, definitely. And it is the one and only Pheano Black, who's got some accolades that I want to list off here. Top 8 at Pro Tour Lille, top 8 of USA Nationals, top 8 at the Calling Indianapolis, which I got to cast, which was awesome, and top 8 at the Realm Rumble in December, with which was honestly a pretty nasty tournament to sort of navigate, as there was a lot of big names there. But Pheano Black is here. How are you, my friend?
Let's go Runaways. Yeah, I'm happy to finally be here. I've been like, it was like our first or second time interacting. I told you, and like, you don't know me at the time, like, this is my favorite podcast, and I've been wanting to come on to this podcast, like, above all else, so bad for like two years now. Oh my God. I'm so happy to finally be here.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very, very kind of you. And I guess it's worth saying that I think the first time that you and I interacted, now here's a story I'm going to tell. I think I've told this story before, but I do want to tell people, because this was, I think, the first time that you and I really had like an in-person interaction was at Pro Tour New Jersey, the first one. It was the Thursday of the banquet or something like that, and I was leaving the venue. And again, I didn't know many people. Not many people knew many other people, frankly, and the community was still very fresh. It was like 2021, I think. The game had just sort of come out of its shell, and I'm leaving the player banquet on Thursday out of this massive venue, and I hear my name. I hear Flake, and I turn around, and it was you.
Best banquet we've ever had, by the way.
It was.
S tier.
It was incredible. So that's the thing, is like, we went from that to some other good banquets, but I think that the New Jersey banquet is still untouched. Yeah, it was exceptional. So I'm walking away, and I hear Flake, and I turn around, and it's you and 3 or 4 other people. I think James was there. I don't recall who else was there with you. However,
specifically the story you're going to tell, that was one of my buddies in the group. It wasn't actually me. It was I got your attention for him.
Okay.
My friend Julian.
Okay. Nonetheless, I walk up. I say, "Hey, how's it going, guys?" You know, and they, I think it was you. You may have been the spokesperson for this, and you said, "Flake, we have a question for you that we'd like your input on." I said, "Absolutely. What's up?" And you said, "All right, here's the deal." And I apologize for those. I don't care. I thought it was hilarious. But you said, all right, we are all basically having a conversation about if you could make any noise out of the entire world of established noises that exist, when that would happen, when you achieve climax, I will say, what would that...
Make some pancake batter.
Correct. I said, what would that noise be? And I said, well... This is unique. I thought you were going to ask me how life as Katsu was going, but so I said, you know what, Pheano? I'm like, I'm not sure. I will get back to you on this. I can't just come up with something, you know. And that was that. And I was like, interesting. I said, that was definitely a unique question. Go back to the hotel. I do like 2 days of casting. I do Friday. I do Saturday. The Saturday's all done. Top 8's the next day. I'm leaving the venue, and it's late, right? It was like 6 or 7 p.m. I'd been there all day. I'm walking away. I hear Flake, and it's you again. And I was like, oh, what's going on? How are things going? How's your tournament? How's this? How's that? You're like, oh, good, good, good. Did you think of an answer? Do you remember the answer I gave you?
Was it like a Jurassic Park sound?
Yes, it
It was
was.
some movie reference.
It was indeed. It was. The answer I gave you. So you know what, Pheano? I actually thought about this. I said, do you remember that scene in Jurassic Park where the raptors have cornered the children in the kitchen, and then one raptor gets up and calls the other one, and is like, and I said, I'll go with that noise, and I think I impressed you at that point. Did I? I mean, like, I would like to. I mean.
That's a good obscure one. That was you put some deep thought into that for sure. That was probably wow, you actually put a lot of thought into this, huh? Wasn't expecting that.
Well, I mean, you could have been a slide whistle. It could have just been a whatever, like R2D2 noises. But no, I really dug deep for this one. And ultimately, all this to say was that
Star Wars movie reference would have been the one I would have expected for sure.
But I come out of nowhere sometimes, okay? And but all this to say is that essentially was the foundation for my relationship with one Pheano Black, which was, okay, this guy is definitely unique and interesting and obviously friendly and unabashed with what it is. And I was like, I love me some Pheano Black, and you're finally on the show, and it's great to have you here. And I think that what we wanted to talk about on this is there's a few major points, one of which is, hey, let's talk about the State of Illusionist. Nobody is as entwined with the class, in my opinion, as you are. There are specialists, like there's the Mara Faris with Dromai, whatever, but you've done the loop around. So let's ask you about this. What is the current State of Illusionist, if you were to sum it up?
Well, I mean, the current State of Illusionist is we only have the one, of course. It's just Prism. So really, it's just what's the current state of Prism, I guess. And she's good. I think that this is one of two moments in Fab where I felt like I'm doing some of the most broken shit I've ever been doing in the entirety of Fab. And the other time, weirdly enough, was Commoner. The Commoner jersey, I was playing the Briar deck. This is the deck that got the bans in Commoner. That was the only other time I felt like I was doing this degenerate kind of stuff, and like that was just me like pushing like super above rate numbers into my opponent and just like killing them really fast. This is a whole nother animal of just like how ridiculously powerful some of the turns can be on Prism, where you're just like not playing the same game as your opponent. Sometimes they're sitting there trying to get their vanilla 13, 14 value a turn, you're bleeding out, and then you just like have this turn that you just like win the game instantly. It's like the game still goes on for a few more rounds sometimes, but like you can look at that turn and you're like, this was the entire game that turn. And it just, I don't know, Dex does some nasty stuff. Is it a problem though? We're gonna talk about that.
We're definitely gonna dig into that. But like the way that you encapsulated it, where you know your experience with it being such that it's like I've done some crazy broken stuff, and my experience against these types of sort of more refined Prism lists that have come out was at like battle hardened Philadelphia. I like started the tournament feeling really good until I ran into a Prism that drew like 11 cards, had 4 Figments on the board, 2 Heralds, and a Partridge in a Pear Tree all in one. And I was just sitting there staring down the library of Solana saying, like, I can't do anything. Yeah, there's nothing I can do. So it's this. But let's ask. I'm going to ask you this, because obviously there is some ceiling to this, and it's sky high. But what is the barrier to this deck just sort of taking over? Is it a skill floor that might be too high? Is it a combo-esque deck that really needs all the right ingredients at the right time? Where is the hindrance to this deck just sort of taking over?
I mean, the hindrance, this is like jumping ahead of something we're going to talk about later a bit, is the self-correcting nature of a deck like this being like... Anyone that watched the last Runaways podcast, we did like a tier list video, and I talked a bit about what I was looking at for like what makes an S tier deck an S tier deck right now. And we talked about this with Kano at one point, and this is kind of relates to Prism as well, of like Kano has a hard time being an S tier deck because the meta will self-correct against it. If you walk into a tournament and you know 50% of the rooms on Kano, you sure as shit know you either should be playing Kano or playing a deck that beats Kano. So the meta is going to adjust. People will bring like, I don't know, a lot of Dash and a lot of Prism, and it's going to be hard for a deck like that to like really thrive in that kind of field because it's just going to face all these bad matchups. And Prism has that problem as well too, where same idea, you play Dash, that's very, very difficult for Prism to play into because it's got all the poppers, it's got the action point cards, you got the on the board answer to them trying to go crazy with the Achilles, and it makes it hard for a deck like Prism to like be this ridiculous like portion of the meta of like overbearing of its meta share. Unlike Kano though, Kano, a lot of people will, I feel incorrectly, look at Kano and go, people are just being greedy. Sloop made a video about that the other day, talking about broken things. And I'm going to call you out, man. You can't just say, oh, people are being greedy, not playing AB, not playing answers. You take a deck that has a bad matchup into Kano and slap AB3 in it, that doesn't fix the matchup. Your deck inherently cannot win that matchup. There's no amount of deck fixing that you can realistically do to fix that matchup. Prism is not the same. Prism, if you slap some answers to Prism in your deck, you are going to pick up way more equity in that matchup than you would against a Kano in that same kind of situation where it's like, let's take, for example, Warrior. Warrior really does a good job fighting over heralds and makes it hard for you to like get your shit going because they just get the free block on boots every turn. So it's like really hard to push through stuff. So it's attractive going for this combo aura game plan into them. And then they have no answer to that in their deck. They're just like, you start going crazy, they're just like, what do I do? There's no card in my deck that gets me out of this situation. I just get to watch you play solitaire for 30 minutes until you tell me the game's over. You change that and you put in time skippers or something. Okay, now I can't do that necessarily anymore. And now the game's different, where now it's going to adjust. There's a slider. It's like, okay, well, now I can start heralding again. And we're just playing the game now. It's not just, oops, combo you. It's, you know, we're going to actually play the game of flesh and blood. But I think Prism is going to really run into that of a lot of self-adjustment in the meta if she picks up too much share. And also just like the better she gets, the better Scabs is going to get. Like, you're just going to see more Brutes.
I think it's an interesting conversation when you talk about like what Sleep mentioned regarding, you know, if you just slam in some AB. And I've always thought that the best defense against decks like Kano or things that you can't necessarily beat is always educating yourself on how that deck operates and where it's trying to win, how it's trying to win, how it's trying to exploit you. And I think you're spot on here, and I think you're correct here. And I'm not gonna downplay what he mentioned in that video, because I'll be honest, I have not seen it. However, a lot of the logic when it comes down to it, if you have a very bad matchup into a deck like Kano and your defense against it, your insulation against it is to just AB3, you're not improving your odds of winning. You're basically like elongating the time that it takes for them to beat you. You're not progressing towards your own win condition. I've always found that the way to beat decks like that, for example, like if I'm on Bravo against a Kano, unless I'm AB5ing it with all the blues I have, and just fatiguing them out, then my opportunity to win is more so I got to beat you in 3 turns with a bunch of dominated fat boy plays.
But if they're just stacking you, like setting up like the crazy pitch stack,
sure,
it doesn't matter. It like that's the thing that beats Kano historically, or at least currently, is decks that can stop him from going off when he goes crazy. So they have some amount of damage prevention either inherently in their equipment or like Dromai with Ash Wings. You've got ideally some native cards in your deck that can prevent damage, like Sand Cover or something like that, or No Fear, and combination pressure. You put a clock on them and you say, you need to go off before you're ready to go off. You cannot just stack me. You cannot just like, oops, combo me because I'm going to sit back with like blues in my hand. Like this is why Dash is such a hard matchup. Dash sits back with blues in their hand, and you don't know the texture of their hand when Dash starts doing things, which is the difficult thing on his Kano, where they're just like playing some boost cards, and it's like, well, do you want to start blocking? Or do you want to go off here? And you don't know the texture of their hand because they may just like be holding double blue and just go load, shoot type of situation. You can't go off into that, and they got the natural AB in their equipment, so it makes it very difficult. The decks that people will typically say just slap AB in, it's like you don't. That deck does not have the ability to pressure. You slap AB3 on a Teklo. What is Teklo doing to win that game? It's just saying they're going to set up a pitch stack and kill you. Like, you didn't actually do anything. All you did was waste both of your time because you were never winning that game.
Yeah,
Or like some other decks, like Dromai, you could slap in sideboard cards and say, like, okay, this is a hard matchup. What if I just slap 9 Paupers in? Now I'm getting some actual equity, even if it's a bad matchup. I can get some equity. I think that changed over time as Dromai got like more refined and everything, but regardless.
So what is life after Dromai then? Because I think that this is a question for a lot of players who, I think there's no secret to it. There's a lot of players who are not just married to particular heroes, but maybe classes in general. And it's always difficult when a hero ascends to Living Legend because you don't know what players are now kind of just walking away from the game entirely. I saw it with Prism. There were people who, as soon as Prism hit Living Legend, they sold their deck and they said, call me when she's back, kind of thing, or just got out of the game. And I'm not saying that that is what's going to happen with Dromai, but there are players out there who are just so intimately linked to Illusionist, let's say, and Dromai was their saving grace. It was their safety net because it wasn't just that it was the only other Illusionist that existed. It was the fact that it was an Illusionist that existed that had viability in the competitive scene. So where are we post Dromai?
Well, that's an interesting thing. When Prism first LL'd, the viability of Dromai was actually a big question mark. Prior to Prism LL'd at Lil from the Calling, and going into like post that, all we really had to go off of with Dromai was like she picked up like a couple niche top 8s here and there. I believe the first one of note, or only one of note, was Jamie Faulkner, I think it was, top 8'd with Dromai. And right after Lil, I was like, oh shit, I don't have a deck. I thought I'd get to play Prism again for Nationals, because Nationals was like, for US at least, was like really close to after Lil. So I had like maybe a month to figure out what the hell I was doing. So like I went to Jamie and worked on the deck with him a bit to like figure out Dromai for that. But like going into that, Dromai was like not a refined deck. I don't feel like people perceive Dromai as like a meta deck. We went into that and it was like Oldhim was really good, but then Oldhim lost I want to say it was Pulse or something. I don't remember. Oldhim got a ban, but then was still pretty good. And then it was Icelander. That was the breakout of Icelander with Hamilton. But not everyone was on that style of deck. So it was a lot of Oldhim going into that. And it's like, well, no one's going to think Dromai beats Oldhim at this time period. But I kind of got away from the question there.
Just, the fact that without... there was that option B, which was Dromai when Prism was gone, and then you're well articulating the point that Dromai wasn't even that attractive of an option when Prism originally rotated out.
So that's like an interesting thing now. It's like I think Prism is more not refined. There's like you can find something and go play right now that has some like merit behind it with Prism. Like I think especially after this weekend, it's on people's radar. People know that Prism is a viable deck. There are deck lists you can play. It is a functioning deck. It's not something that needs that much solving to go to your ProQuest or RTN or something. The thing that kind of is weird there is Prism, OG Prism to Dromai, I think was like a pretty natural transition for a lot of people because it was still the like board state control style of deck if you were going from Aura Prism into that. New Prism does not play like either of the other illusions. I think it was like actually a really big deal. Kind of what you were saying a minute ago of like people just like, I'm out with Prism LLing originally. Call me when there's a new Prism or something like that. I think it was a really big deal that we got the announcement of Enigma for coming soon and showing just enough to say, hey, this might be a board state control deck. You don't know yet, but Spectral Shield, pretty high odds this is some sort of control-y deck. New Prism is not that. It is you're either one of two things right now, at least. You could theoretically be an aura control deck, but that's very hard to get to work. You're generally either Ooga Booga aggro heralds, or you're this combo aura deck. And neither of those styles really play like the previous two illusionists, except for maybe the Ooga Booga herald kind of plays like the red line Mara style of deck, where you're just like, no blocks, throw my hand at you every turn and just get my value. Because like the value on the herald is nuts. It's like 2-card 12 sometimes. But I think that is a little bit difficult for people. Like I don't really actually consider myself an illusionist main. I just happened to be on illusionist for this whole time because I'm more of like a board state control player. So like this has been very uncomfortable playing new Prism. This is just like not my comfort zone of style of deck.
That's interesting because I think you and I are similar in terms of players. I mean, I loved playing Prism beforehand because I just loved board control. I never really, linked up with Dromai. I played it a bit, but to me, it was just I preferred playing Guardian into it. So I was just like, I'm just going to play Guardian. But I think you and I have similar play styles. Like I like control board, maintaining a board state that I have all the pieces for, that I'm the one pulling the strings on and creating the decisions for my opponent. And I think that that's really a unique style that I think you've said it best, is that this isn't what Prism's doing right now. This isn't what Prism represents. I think that there's like this second face to Prism. We knew her once upon a time as, let's set up auras, let's make it overwhelming. We're going to get our face beaten in for about 3 or 4 turns, but we're going to turn the corner and then it's all us. This doesn't seem that way, but like you mentioned,
it does feel kind of like Monarch Prism a little bit. I don't know if you played it at all back then. It's like a little similar to that, but
yeah, well, like go again Herald, like, and just trying to find these 2-cost 7s that, and exploiting the fact that your opponent doesn't have poppers. Like that is certainly one way. But what are your sort of initial thoughts about Enigma? Because like you said it fine there that this might be the second coming of that aura control because Spectral Shield is mentioned. But are those enough breadcrumbs in your mind? Do you think that Enigma is going to be this second iteration of control-based illusionists?
So, like, we have those breadcrumbs. I have an extra breadcrumb, which isn't like that big of a breadcrumb, but I have massive faith in the dev team and specifically James White. He specifically came up to me and was like, "Hey, at World PT, like, hey, what'd you think? Were you excited?" And I was just like, talking back and forth with him, and he told me at one point during the conversation, he was just like, "I think that this." You're going to jive with and you're going to really like this. Like you specifically, and kind of made a comment being like, I know you've kind of had your misgivings, is that the right word, about new Prism. This I think is more up your alley, he kind of told me. And that was nothing in any official capacity, so take that with a grain of salt. But I trust them. If he tells me that he thinks I'm going to like it, sure, I have faith in it. It's not like I really have much choice in that matter. It's like
it's like it is what it is, right?
Prism.
Yeah, but I think that that's perfectly fine, and I think that James, for the most part, whenever he does kind of single out a player or a play style and says you're going to like what's coming, and for the most part, I think it's been a hit, and that's why a lot of people are thinking about, okay, when is Wizard going to get a little bit more help? When is this?
He did tell me I was going to like my last spoiler.
He didn't.
he did tell me I was going to like my next spoiler, the last time for Luminaris. I was like, oh, you're right.
You did mention that it was a game changer, and I think that that's precisely what it is. And it kind of, like you said, it just kind of shifted this current Prism to, like you mentioned, this all-out aggro, go crazy. It could go combo. It could send to hurt. Like these 2-card 12, 13, on-hit value kinds of things. And that's kind of where we are now. But like with Dromai circling out and this current Prism being what it is, who is benefiting from the ascension of Dromai to Living Legend? What is the meta currently looking like in your eyes from, we'll say, an illusionist perspective, but more so just as a broad stroke?
Yeah. So like the big winners of Dromai leaving is going to be the decks that struggled to clear board and present a clock to Dromai. Kind of similar to the Kano thing of prevent damage and present a clock. Well, this is clear dragons and present a clock. So like assassin, Teklo, things like this that just like could not deal with both of these questions that Dromai presented. The problem is all those decks also get just absolutely pooped on by Prism. It's like, did you see that meme from Ethnic Smoke the other week on Twitter where it was just like finally playable assassin and stuff, and just Prism standing behind?
I did see that. Pankaj is awesome. I love that guy.
Oh my god, one of my new favorite all-time casters for sure. I think him and Sam has become my favorite casting duo. Just
They're
like
so good.
The oh my god, the way they bounce off of each other is just, I love it so much.
I'm so jealous because I think have I ever casted with Pankaj? Maybe not. I know that I've casted with Sam a few times, but like I just look at that, and to me it's a matter of there's a jealousy factor because I was like, I really want to cast with them, but at the same time I'm like, well, the integrity of the stream is such that I do not want to mess with that mojo that they are building together. It's awesome.
It's so good. Like, oh my god, I've been watching like this type of stuff for like decades now, for like since from Magic and back in the day Yu-Gi-Oh, and it's just like, this is just like my favorite all time. I think you guys are great. Anyways, what were we saying?
Well, we were talking about who benefits from Dromai.
Oh, the meme. Right. That's what I was like, how did we get onto casting?
Pankaj.
So Kano, another great one that gets much better with Dromai leaving the meta, but Prism. A lot of the decks that got better from Dromai leaving, it's just like deck after deck after deck that just like, but now I just lose to Prism instead. So this is going to be a question of how much meta share does Prism take out of Dromai's now that she's gone, because like now there's a hole of all these players that are no longer playing Dromai. Where do those players go? And I think it's going to be less than Dromai, because Dromai was such a popular deck, and I don't know if Prism's going to be necessarily as popular, because it's just like, I think Prism's like a little less appealing to some of the like hyper competitive people, because there's a lot of inconsistency in your games, and I think that Prism also like really preys on people not knowing what's going on. Like,
oh yeah,
I would say that I get a ton of equity in the deck of just my opponent not knowing the priority of things to kill, not knowing what questions I'm presenting. Like, I'm going off, are they supposed to block or not? Like, are they supposed to take damage and try to clear? Are they supposed to just give me their whole hand? Is there an arc light behind this, so they should have just blocked? Like, I'm getting a lot more value out of people just like not knowing what's going on than I realistically should be, and that's probably going to go away in the next couple months of just people getting more experience into this deck. But I've never felt like this gap of knowledge equity that I've been getting on a deck. This is like one of the reasons that I didn't want to play it for the Pro Tour. I was just like, internally, this deck is just absolute dog to someone that knows what's going on. Like, I cannot get anything going into our teammates. I'm just going to play the deck that I know can do good. So the decks that I think that actually get some equity out of Dromai leaving is KO, Prism, obviously. Prism, it gets better for these same reasons. And Dash, Inventor Extraordinaire. Dromai leaving, I think, is really good for KO, because I think that was a really hard matchup for KO. It was definitely winnable on both sides, but I think Dromai was like ahead enough where it's like a little uncomfortable for KO. And with how popular again Dromai is, again, that's uncomfortable for KO. If Prism picks up in popularity, that is also good for KO. So bad matchup gone, and a new good matchup picking up in popularity in the meta. So I think that's going to be pretty good for KO. And then Dash, I mentioned this earlier, you got the action points, you got the poppers, that's good there. And Dromai was a bad matchup for Dash. So, it's the same idea. I don't know if Dash is actually going to be good in this meta, but I see that and I'm like, that is attractive to me if I was a Dash player.
It's a unique conversation being had now where players are kind of just also when you have been on a hero that was never really in the spotlight, or never really the tier 0 that some others have been there, like the Chains or like the others that are, people are now starting to have that realization that it's like, wow, okay, the Dromai's gone. and that kind of was in one 6-month wave of a lot of points being accumulated. Like, I'm at the hero I love that has been there for so long, be it Dash or Bravo or whoever. It's like we're not necessarily in the danger zone, but if one set comes out that supercharges a particular, or a card gets printed, or a strategy is discovered that just kind of exploits a meta for a couple months, that a lot of people are now just saying, like, I got to start thinking about what happens when Bravo ascends or Dash ascends or so. Dash is close.
I've been wanting to learn Dash for a while, but I'm just like, I don't want to put the time into a deck that's at like 700 points.
Yeah,
I just don't want to waste my time doing that. Prism already is at 200 points today.
That's crazy. And like the thing about Dash was also that Dash coming out at Arcane Rising in 2020 or whatever it was, it's been a slow burn, but a consistent burn, because I don't think Dash has ever been out of the conversation. It has always been there as either a viable tier 1 option, or it has been there as a very comfortable tier 2, 2.5 sort of peripheral, like, oh, if you've played it before and you're comfortable with it, that you can win with it. It has never exploded in the same vein that like Chain has, or Starvo, let's say, but it has never really been off the grid either. It's been this slow burn, and I think that this is why it's creeping up on people. And I have to ask you again. This is like, again, just kind of like deviating.
It's funny though. Her points like slowed down after Bright Lights. It felt like it's like,
is that weird?
She's an LL now. And then it's just like, nope.
Well, I think it's a part of it.
Well,
I think from Bright Lights, it may have been a factor of like people got all these new toys and then tried out a bunch of stuff, realizing that no, we just built her the old way, and like that's we swap in a few cards here and there.
I think the real problem was Bright Lights giving us Tome for Dromai.
Oh yeah,
it was just like Dromai said, "No, I'll be the deck that got better this set. You can have your day in the spotlight later."
Yeah,
because like you saw how popular Dromai was over the past like couple months. Like,
it was huge,
ridiculous.
Well, a lot of people got paid off in the sense, like, the Mara Farises, the Aaron Chance, who put the time in. They just became the number one players in those kinds of decks, and sort of everybody started falling in line to realize that this wasn't an option 2. It was an option 1A all along. It's always been that good. So where Prism Awakener of Soul now kind of slots in, is it a worthy contender? And we've talked a lot about it here, but how do you evaluate where she holds up and the potential longevity? You mentioned she's already scooped up like 200 points, and I think that's pretty impressive for a deck that the only people who had faith in her were the developers for so long. Like, they were the ones that were kind of beating the drum and pumping her tires for so long, but now she's got 200 points quietly, as it were, but everybody's talking about her but not respecting her. It's an
quietly.
Well,
quietly, have you listened to Twitter?
Well, okay. So if you want to, we can always just dive into the Arclight Sentinel conversation. But I'm going to let you grab the rudder on this and direct the ship, because there's so much that we could talk about. But I'm going to let you kind of pop off on what it is that you want to talk about.
Well, I mean, finishing what you were just asking, where is she at right now? She's just a solid deck. People need to learn how to play against her. You should respect her if you're going to ProQuest these next 2 weekends. You should have a plan for how to beat this deck. You should, to anyone watching this, if you do not feel confident in your Prism matchup, go play 5 games as Prism. Like, you need to understand what's going on, because there's so many moving pieces, so many moments where you can get juiced by the deck. Understand the rules, interactions, understand what the game texture is like when they do and do not have a halo up. Like, all those little things, like, you need to understand these things. Otherwise, you're going to get juiced on a turn and just lose the game instantly. But realistically, once you know what's going on, she drops down to like a solid like bottom of A tier type of deck, maybe top of B tier type of deck. Like, you're doing powerful things. You've got a good matchup spread. You can lose. You can. One of the only games I dropped this weekend, well, my Arclights were on the bottom. They just kept shuffling to the bottom. It was a assassin. I had to do the combo game plan into them. I just didn't see a single Arclight. You can just lose. Like, you need to understand these types of things on both sides of the matchup. And like that kind of inconsistency can hold the deck back.
So,
yeah.
And I guess I kind of also want to, before we're kind of, we got some time still left, but I don't know. I know that when we were kind of setting up for this episode, I asked you, I said, is there anything that you particularly want to attack or talk about or approach? And you mentioned that there's a lot of discourse that have come about regarding, cards that have been called for bans, or cards that have kind of just come out of the woodwork that have always been there, but have suddenly tickled the community the wrong way in certain capacities. And Kano's always, caught some strays here and there. Arclight Sentinel randomly, has always, I say randomly, it's always been a card that has annoyed people. But now it's being wheeled back in because of this combo that we're talking about, the Arclight Sentinel sort of loop. But, Scabskin Leathers and a whole bunch of others. I want to ask you about this card ban discourse and, where you sit with it, and the fact that you yourself were also fairly mired within that heated discussion of Arclight Sentinel. So as somebody who has played that card an infinite amount of times, where do you stand with Arclight Sentinel?
So there's like two parts to this. It's like maybe three parts. There's like this specific thing with the Arclight, and then just like the macro of like the bans and the discourse and everything of just like where people are coming from. I'm gonna answer the first part of just like Arclight specifically. I think all the Arclight shenanigans that you can do right now is absolutely bonkers broken. Is it fine though? Is it fine? I think that it's fine for people to be able to do powerful things in the game. This is like what do we? I think we're at like a bit of a crossroads of like, what do we as a community want Fab to kind of be, and do we want Fab to just be like boring mid-range push 14 around, or do we want these exciting things that can happen in games that are interesting for camera, interesting for games, and like appealing to a more casual audience, or like semi-competitive, like. Just pushing 14 a turn is not interesting. It's not engaging. Having these like big moments that you can play towards, it's fun. Like I was having a blasting my opponents with this Arclight shenanigans stuff and just like doing all these crazy things. Like I played Prism this weekend because I was like, I already got my invite. I just want to have fun, and I had fun. It was a blast. But I had all the fun, and I think that's part of the problem with like a lot of these things right now. And is it a zero-sum type of situation where like, is that fine? And like, this is not an uncommon thing in other card games for people to just like have moments where you get all the fun. I'm getting kind of off track though. I think that there's nothing that necessarily needs to happen right now in regards to bans for Arclight. I am not calling for a ban, and I think that if anything were to happen, there's like a couple things you could look at. It's like ban Arclight. Obviously, you could suspend Arclight or limit Arclight, because then you just can't loop anymore. One, you could also just hit the rebirth instead. I think the actual card that I would want to go out of this would just be. I was talking about this with Pierre. This is the Kasai that got top 8 at the calling at PT that just happened with Kasai. I was talking about it with him, and I was like, I think I agree with him that Vestige would be a good suspension, because a lot of this goes out the window with Vestige gone, but then you still get access to doing a lot of what the deck is trying to do. Like you're not saying you don't get to play the deck anymore, basically, and do these things. It's just throttling back the crazy explosiveness of it with Tome and Eruditioning 3 times in a row with Arclights, and then oopsing into a loop. You just can't do that anymore, but you can still play the deck, and you still get to get your value with Arclights with Erudition. I think the loop, I don't think is really a problem. Just play cards in your deck that break the loop. Like if you were a deck that loses to the loop, sideboard something. Like this is the self-correcting thing. The thing that like really sticks out to me more with Arclight Sentinel that's like egregious is just how much value you generate with it with Erudition when you're doing the thing. Most of my games aren't about the Arclight loop. It's I set an Arclight, I wait for a hand with some funny cards in it, and I say, no blocks, it's go time. Crack Halo, put it in Erudition, draw some cards, put an Arclight plus a Genesis into play, pass, draw, oh, trigger Genesis, play the Arclight from Arsenal, play a Tome, draw some more cards, and you dig through so many cards that it's really easy to Arclight 3 times in a row, especially since you've like thinned your deck a bit. And just the amount of crazy advantage you get in those turns, I think is like a little bit much, but I think it's, again, play cards that break the loop. If you're doing that, you're going to get out of this Erudition nonsense. They get their one turn of fun, no more of this. We're done doing that. So I don't think we need any bans right now. I think just let people correct and adjust what they're doing.
I want to interject real quick here because you see.
Yeah, go. No, I'm gonna ramble about this.
No,
so
it's fine.
Please interject.
That's what this show's about. Trust me. I would call it rambling. I don't know. There's nothing clever to come up with there, but ultimately,
Ravenous Ramble.
Ravenous Ramble could definitely be the name of this show. But you mentioned just play the counters or. We are that would assume that I have a thought to begin with, which is not really always the case. So you mentioned about just play the counter, just play the what stops it or this or that, and I think that there are two different sort of sides to this that don't have the clear bridge that many may think, because we just went from talking about how Kano doesn't have the same stop ability, but does have the same kind of, I guess, oppression or inevitability that you just can't break. So for example, when Prism starts doing Prism things and goes off on that loop, if you don't have the tools to stop it, you're going to feel like it's a helpless situation. You called it solitaire until you're told that you lost. And it's the same thing with Kano. Kano, once they start popping off, I usually just report. And I'm like, I'm going to save myself some time. I've done it before. I'm not kidding you. I have done it before where I sat through 12.
Relatable.
Yeah, it was like 12 or 13 minutes of Kano mathing, and when they're done, they're like, "Oh, I got there." I'm like, "Yeah, dude, it's okay. I reported like 15 minutes ago. It's all good."
I mean, them not getting you a coloring book has to be unsportsmanlike conduct for sure.
Yeah,
right?
there should be. It should honestly be like when you go to the doctor's office and there's like a whole bunch of like kids' toys and stuff. Sometimes a magazine is not going to suffice.
Yeah, Life magazine.
Yeah. But where does it differentiate where you might say to somebody who is feeling a little bit under the thumb of Prism, saying, hey, just put the stoppers in there, be it the extra action points, the this, the that. But with Kano, you may say, hey, you're just helpless. Like, where's the disconnect here? What differentiates the two?
I was talking about earlier of Kano fundamentally has matchups that you are not fundamentally winning no matter what you sideboard. Like you are not actually moving the needle in that matchup no matter how much AB you have. If you present no AB, you're just going to explode. If you present AB, okay, well you can't actually kill me. I will block as the Kano. So I'm just going to set up fat stack and combo you later on in the game, and your AB5 double, like, I mean, maybe not a double Oasis, but your like AB plus Oasis does not matter. You are dead this turn. You're gonna get like, I don't know, triple wildfired or something. Like, it just does not matter. You are dead. This is deterministic. Now that requires a lot of skill on the Kano part to like actually set up the proper stack and everything. And like, those people are absolute geniuses that play Kano like that. They're fucking mind palaces. But Prism, it's not quite that. I attempt to go off on Prism and you crack your time skipper boots. Unless I have the double Arclight in play, which I actually did that this weekend in my top 8 game Sunday. My opponent is Bolton, and he plays the Spirit of Arena on turn like 3, and I'm like, damn it. I was like trying to go off before he got that down, and he just like instantly had it. But then my combo turn was Erudition double Arclight, and he's just like, oh. He can't clear both of them. Yeah. But like, that's such a small chance of that happening. That's like not a real game. Like I sacked him so hard by doing that. Most of the time it's the one Arclight. So if you're able to crack your boots and kill the Arclight and then kill the Erudition, it's done. We're not doing this anymore. You don't have enough velocity to do this anymore, or kill the Rebirth if they put that into play and they don't have a Erudition flip. But usually you just like picking off the Arclight plus Angel that they need at that moment. is enough that we move back into we're playing a normal game again, and we're just playing Flesh and Blood. You may take a lot of damage to do this, and it may be bad value, but usually the Prism takes a lot of damage to do this on the other side, so it's fine. We may see adjustments out of Prism side, though, where they start playing differently because they know that people are playing time skippers. Like, that was something I was experimenting with on Sunday. I was trying out Iris of Reality because I knew that some of the Guardians in my area were double hammer time skippers, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do about that? I can't combo that. So I'm just going to try playing a normal aura game plan into them, and if I overwhelm them with auras and then combo, that's probably good enough. But I was experimenting. So, like, but that's a Prism needs to adjust, like, to what you have on the table. And if they don't have the tools in their deck, they cannot do the thing into you.
I remember a long time ago when I was practicing, and this was like 3 years ago, practicing with Dalen Mack, where he's like, Flake, I got an idea. I was like, yeah. He's like, check out this list. I'm like, why do you have 2 Winter's Whales? And he's like, auras, man, auras. I was like, okay, I guess it makes sense. And he's like, I'm just gonna go in there double fisting and beating the crap out of all of these things. I'm gonna make action points with Blink, and then I'm gonna beat the crap out of all these auras. I was like, all right, I'm not gonna argue with you. And that lasted 1 day of testing, and then it went away. But the double hammers, the this, the that, the fact that, like, there are solutions out there. I guess a lot of the conversation now is, and look, I'm going to be completely honest with you here. A lot of this I'm just going to attribute to stubbornness and the fact that players don't want to adapt to metas. They just want things to adapt to themselves. That is pure stubbornness. And I have been very clear about this over years and years of being involved competitively in TCGs from this side of the aisle. I have said this to people's faces. It's a lot of the hindrances of people succeeding is their own stubbornness and their own ego. If they're not prepared to make adjustments because they think that something is unfair or busted, that is your own ego speaking, and that isn't for you to decide. The decks are built a certain way, and cards exist with that solution. If you are not there to change and yeah, well, that's it. If you're not susceptible to the ebbs and flows of the meta, then you're going to be left aside while everything is sort of fluctuating. But that said, there has to be a certain level of tolerance for people where it's like, okay, but this exists. I shouldn't have to devote 8 sideboard cards to beat this one strategy. Like, is there, in your estimation, almost like a certain level of unreasonableness to how decks are perceived? Like, you said this, like, if it's just a matter of throwing time skipper boots to potentially beat a deck, that's easy enough. That's almost too easy. But if you're devoting, what's that level? What's that Goldilocks zone when it comes to devoting cards to beat big decks?
I mean, big decks in general, it really depends on the texture of your deck. Like, sideboarding in Fab is so different than other card games because it's not the 60 plus 15. It flows in and out with your deck. I think a 1-card inclusion for a matchup is more than reasonable. And then that's just a question of, does that move the needle in the matchup for you, just that 1-card inclusion? And I mean, we've seen in the past people bring in like 6 sideboard slots for Dromai. That's, I think, reasonable.
I don't think that's obnoxious to a degree. I mean, if you're going through like any type of sideboard science here, and you're thinking like, hey, if there are, like you mentioned, like we both agreed to earlier, there are going to be matchups that you are just not meant to win, and if you're devoting all of your sideboard cards to turn an 80-20 matchup into a 75-25, that's just bad math. That's not the kind of return, like the ROI, the return on investment that you're looking for. But if you're devoting 6 cards because a particular deck is going to represent 20% of the meta, and that turns a 60-40 into a 50-50, I think that's exceptional math. I think that's very prudent.
So I think that stubbornness thing that you mentioned is like actually a part of this whole discussion of the bans thing of explaining why people are so up in arms and everything, and also that 80-20 thing of matchups you're just not supposed to win. So something that's different about Fab compared to other games is a lot of people have that character hero deck identity. I want to play my deck. And you look at a lot of moments in time where people have been upset about things. A lot of it will come from, I feel like, XYZ is good. It means I can't play my thing. I can't play, I can't even think of an example. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the easiest example in my eyes is one of those things where, like, when Frostbite was prevalent, and people were like, I can't, like, how am I supposed? Like, I kept all these cards and then got busted on a Frostbite at the end of it, and now I can't do my 4-card combo because of this Frostbite. Therefore, Frostbite is broken because I am not given a free pass.
I can't play Katsu because Briar is meta, and it's the better aggro deck, and the only decks that can beat Briar right now are the Ice decks and this defensive Viserai deck. I can't play my deck, and it's a 4-deck meta. Meta's adjusting and doing its own healthy thing, but is doing the normal metagame thing for other card games where it's like you need to play the deck or the deck that beats the deck, or the deck that beats the deck that's beating those decks.
Triangle of Doom, baby, yeah.
And that current triangle is only consisting of like 6 decks. And if you're not playing those, what are you doing? And I think we've had a lot of moments like that where it's felt like I can't play my deck, therefore I'm not having fun with the game, and I don't want to play something else. I don't want to play the correct deck. I want to play my deck. I want to feel like I can win with my thing. And I think part of that has to... I think it's like exacerbated because we don't really have that same kind of casual outlet in Fab that you do in other games like Magic, where it's like, I'll just go play a different format, or I'll go play Commander, and it's like I can go do the other thing and still engage with the game, kinda. It's like a lot of the time it's just classic constructed. That's it. So if your thing is not good right now in CC, what else is there to do right now?
I think it's a fair evaluation. I mean, like, I wouldn't call it tribalism or anything in that regard. It's just a very, tight-knit association that people have with the characters, be it, and it's not just true for card games. It's the same way that, if you're playing Overwatch, there's only like, oh, these are the 3 characters I play, and if this gets nerfed or whatever, I'm just not going to play. And we've seen it, but at the same time, like, even when
they've just done such a good job with character identity, and like this is a problem created, I think, from them doing a very good job with hero design. Like if it was just a deck or like whatever, people wouldn't care. Like it would just be like that I think that people not caring would be an example of them not doing a good job with character enfranchisement in the game.
I feel like you're right in that regard, that it is just a symptom of them doing a very good job with lore and character establishment, and how people have not just associated with the characters, but how the characters are unique and they have a story, and people like either the aesthetic, or they like the history, or they like the play style, but they'll buy in. They'll be like, no, this is my character and this is what I want to do. And the problem there, I think, is just that they're, and this is a whole other can of worms to open, but at a certain degree, there's no other outlet for people to enjoy those characters outside of the kitchen table, because they can't bring it to a legal tournament. There's no other media to consume, be it, shows, books, comics, whatever it is, toys, whatever it is. There's nothing else for them to invest in. And I feel like sometimes they feel left out in the cold. This has definitely been a conversation that I have been privy to from all walks of life and all sides of the argument, where people are just saying, like, this is gone, and so am I. And, wake me up when September comes, because, like, that's where we're at when it comes to particular heroes. I agree with you. I think that this is one of those, like, symptoms of just being too successful to a degree. And, like, it's just weird to say.
Game. They make a great game. This is suffering from success.
Yeah. That's, and like, if you're going to suffer from something, I think that success is the best way to do it, is just, let's keep printing product, let's keep expanding, let's keep growing the player base. And this is the consequence, friends, is that as more people play, as more cards are printed and more decks are innovated, some of those heroes are going to naturally attain living legend, be it at the meteoric pace of a Starvo or a Chain, let's say, or at the slow burn that we're seeing now with heroes like like Dash. Like but at the same time, those Dash mains, you know, they're going to have to figure out, am I a Dash IO player? Am I a Teklovossen player? Am I a Max Nitro player? Or am I just not playing at all? Or am I going to explore different, you know, the other side of the fence? And this is an interesting aspect. And I've always, encouraged people to try new things when it comes to card gaming, be it either a new hero or even just a different style of play, like you and I being control players and things like that. But it's tough because I don't stray too far from my home base. Like I have my comfort zone of heroes and play styles, and moving into national season, like I've been talking to Tarek and the Canadians, and like we're gonna practice together. And the first thing he told me, I'm not kidding you, was you need to like get off of Bravo's teat. Like I was like, yes, I completely agree. Now I'm paraphrasing here, but it was probably more along the lines of like, you need to stop sucking so-and-so's something. And I was like, I agree. And I'm all for it. But it's uncomfortable. And I can see...
that's for the OnlyFans Metacarpus nudes.
Yes, the Metacarpus nudes. Yes, the Metacarpus nudes. But that's a wizardly type of thing. That is for when Peter Budensic and Majin Bey finally trust me enough to install a webcam in our hotel room. It's a whole other conversation. But yeah,
real quick, we went down quite a rabbit hole there.
Let's do it.
The character identity. The like other side of the bands thing, I think, is like on more of a I don't know, not reasonable side, but whatever. Some of these things that people have been complaining about are objectively very broken or negative play experiences. The whole Kano thing, like what's been the big ones? Scabs, Kano, Arclight.
Frostbite.
Is there anything else recently?
I guess recently. I mean, some were about Tome, like some were hating on Tome for a while. Warmongers is definitely one. Codex of Frailty was definitely a lightning rod.
The recent ones of those three, at least, not from like before, from Warmongers back, not including those. So from those recent three, I'd say all three of those are like really big negative play experiences and go against a lot of the core of what Fab feels like it should be when you're playing it. Fab generally is a game where you're eking out small advantages into your opponent. You're having this like throwdown brawl with the other guy until someone can't stand anymore. And it's very high skill a lot of the time. You're making a lot of meaningful choices, and some of these don't feel like they fit that paradigm of how Fab is played. Turning the game into oops roll scab skins, oops combo, it doesn't feel like what Fab is supposed to be, and you just sitting there watching your opponent. In the case of the two combos of Arclight plus the Wildfire stuff, sitting there for 15 plus minutes watching your opponent play the game and letting them tell you how the game outcome is going to be, and at the end of it, doesn't feel like what Fab is. And there was that whole discourse over whether or not scabs should like actually be rolled as often as it should be. Like James made a comment about that, and there was like one whole side where you had a lot of top players talking about the math behind it and how it was correct to roll in these certain scenarios and everything. And yeah, there's the whole math side of that, and then there's the other side where your opponent just goes ooga booga, no blocks, roll scabs, and that's just like infuriating to play against. And sure, that there's like so many people when they hear those types of complaints where it's just like, oh well, you just lost to Kano one time and now you're just complaining on Twitter. And it's like, all right, that feels tone deaf sometimes, because like that's you run into those people where their tournament run is, my strategy is not viable to actually get wins, but I'm gonna fuck up your record. And that doesn't feel like something great to play against necessarily. And sure, there are times where you're supposed to do that because you're not winning that game, so you have to just say, there's no universe where I can win this game normally, so I have to roll scabs. And I mean, that's maybe not great in another sense, but it just doesn't feel competitive for that side of things. And it's just all negative play experiences, like down the whole list of those cards. They're just shitty to play against as a competitive player. They can create exciting moments for camera And that goes back to the other thing of, is that what we want Fab to be? And I think at some level, yeah, we need Fab to have these exciting moments. When I have gone to the past 2 Living Legend things, all I could hear everyone talking about was just how much fun they were having doing broken stuff and like having these crazy turns. Win or lose, they'd be like, I lost, but like, look at this thing I did. It was cool. I think it's important that we don't turn the game into just vanilla 14 and have these exciting moments. I think the recent set had some great examples of that too. Like I want to see more design in Fab where it's like Raisin Army. I think Raisin Army was like a really well designed card, and where it's this signpost card that says, hey, this is what this hero wants to be doing. It's majestic. It's got the character on the card. It's very obvious, like, hey, this is a signpost card. And you read it and you go, okay, this is a gameplay loop I need to look to do, and I'm going to deck build around this type of thing. And then when you do this thing, you get this nice dopamine hit, and you feel like you did the thing. Win or lose, you felt like you did the thing. And I think we've moved away from that a bit, and we've had in those like throw 14 kind of games where we're both just doing that. I've heard this echoed a lot from people locally where they'll lose a game, and it's one of those kind of matchups, and they like have no idea why they lost. We're just like throwing numbers at each other, and just at the end of the game we just added up the math of who won. I don't know what I did wrong. It's not, and they don't feel like they did the thing necessarily all the time. Not everyone feels that way, obviously, but like I think having these types of things where you felt like you did the Mordred Tide, go crazy, I did the thing. Those moments I think are really good in games. So it's just, how do we make them not feel terrible to play against?
They're important, I think, and it's part of the reason, if I may, sort of transcend into another card game, it's the reason why Hearthstone just, celebrated 10 years of dominating the digital sphere, still, despite all the controversy, and all the hysterics about economy and this and that. It's the fact that players can compete in it, but at the same time, mediocre players can still have those big wow moments that you had just so well described, which is, holy crap, I did the thing. I built the jank, I did the thing. It's great. The difference here is that the quote unquote jank within Flesh and Blood is meant to sometimes be a win condition, being it paying off on a Raisin Army where you have like, oh, I've just accumulated gold. Like, you're right. It is a marquee card. It is a build around card because it basically creates a paint by number scenario of, okay, this card represents your win condition and how to build your deck to attain it. Get gold, get good, get there. Like, that's kind of what that card, but that's what it is. Like, that's.
I did so bad at the Battle Hardened with Kasai. I missed that step on Raisin Army.
Oh, you see, you got gold. You didn't get good, and you didn't get there. There's a key bridge. Idiot. Yeah, but I completely agree. And in the same vein that the game needs to have, I mean, let's be real. It's a very math-oriented, value-based game because it can be parsed out and sort of solved, quote unquote, to a degree of what a better play is purely by numbers, value, things like that. There's no debating that. But in the same vein that Charles Dunn can win US Nats off of squeaking out marginal little advantages from turn after turn and turtling up, the same thing can happen where, like, we're going to wheel this back to the beginning of the conversation today, which is that Prism can do some bonkers stuff, and so can Kasai, and so can God knows what else. And I agree with you wholeheartedly, Pheano, is that the game needs these things. And it's going to suck when you get taken to task because somebody did it to you. It doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it happened. And I think that is worth sort of putting a highlight over.
Did you watch that game from I want to say it was AGE, I don't remember. It was the Teklo versus Kasai, where like within the turn cycle, guy resolved Raisin Army, and then other guy resolved the Necropotent. Yeah,
I think I saw. Like,
that. I think that kind of moment is like moments that you need more of in Fab, where it's like, oh my god, they both did the crazy thing. I have no idea who wins from here.
You know what that is? It is the perfect encapsulation of what Power Rangers used to be in the 90s, which was, or at any time, which was, oh my God, Rita Repulsa just like upsized her monster into this big thing. But hold on the other side, now we go past priority to the Power Rangers and they called in their Zords. Like, awesome. Like, that's exactly what and now you have this big monster fight. Like, it's, you know, like, I think that is pretty cool. You've got Godzilla versus Kong. Nobody is going to sit there and argue that this is an Oscar-worthy movie, but we're all going to sit there and watch with big dumb smiles on our face because we don't know who's going to win, right? Like, that's what
exciting.
It is. Oh, Pheano, we just took this full circle. What an episode. Now,
I think that was my favorite game of the year for what it's worth. That was so fun to watch.
It was, because it was people doing the thing that the heroes were like, because you know when, like, look, James and Brian, who are designing the game, are very much those cold, calculated assassins who were killing people in card games, and they understand value, and they understand that the cool thing isn't always the best thing, but you know, at the same time, not everybody's out there to be the best. Sometimes they just want to be the best that day or the best that turn, and that's perfectly fine, because you said it yourself. That dopamine hit that you get when you put the mech suit on, like, that's pretty rad. And I've played against mechs, and holy crap, do they tear your face off when they get going. It is scary when Teklo goes full Iron Man on you. Like, it's a nasty reality. But is it viable? It's viable. Is it tier 1? No. Is it fun? Yeah. Is it awesome to watch? Hell yeah. And I think that
I think they've been experimenting with doing them more and more, though. Like, you look at older sets, you know, we had the same thing with, like, Monarch with the make the token type of payoff type of things of, like, the 6/6 guys. You look at Brian's, like, big card that he first made, I believe it was, Regicide. Like, that was another top-down design type of card that really spells out not only what you're trying to do, but it was such a flavor win of, like, I'm scouting out all your weaknesses, and then I got to take this one shot at the king type of situation. Like, those types of flavor connected to mechanics type of things. I think that's the big reason why you have this crazy, like, no, I want to play my deck, because they do such a good job tying in mechanic to flavor of it feels like you're doing the thing. It feels like you're the mother of dragons creating the swarm. It's such good tie-in.
I love it. I love it. We are pushing up against the clock here. I want to give you an opportunity if you've got anything that you want to sort of crush before we sort of sign off here. But I will say this: it has been such a great conversation and very spirited, which is what I expected from one Pheano Black. So Pheano, I'm going to give you, one last option, one last at bat here to tee up whatever the hell you want and take your biggest swing at it.
What does that even mean?
I'm using it was like a baseball T-ball reference.
Am I just trying to plug here?
No, you could. I'm not saying plug. If there's a topic that you want to, I know that, like, you were one of the best prepared guests I think I've ever had. Like, usually when I give show notes, they're just like, yeah, whatever, just go for it. You're like, I've added to your show notes. I've brought up some other topics that I was like, hell yeah, Pheano's on the ball here. So I knew that we couldn't get to all of it.
on the other side of this, so like I get it.
Yeah, well, there you go. See, exactly. You know precisely where I'm coming from here. As you know, the Runaways podcast is a great podcast with excellent people on it. So I want to, I'll throw that plug out there right now. But is there anything else that you want to tackle? Any other issue that has got you sort of in a little bit of a tizzy?
I think we pretty much covered everything. There was one thing that we had on here that I had a thought on. It's funny with the whole bands talk too. I'm like historically such an anti-bans person in like the history of card gaming. For me, I've always been like, no, I don't want bans unless it absolutely has to happen. I would rather we either give time for people to adjust or just print answers to said things. Like in the past, everyone was always talking about like bans for Prism, OG Prism in the past. I was like, no, they just need to print more answers for Prism. Give us some more action point cards that decks can play. Give us things that can clear auras, like something of reality. What was that stupid ass non-attack action that came out recently?
Oh god.
it like buffs your next attack, and then it has the plunder run type of thing where like if anything does damage, you get the trigger.
Oh, right.
And
Yeah.
It kills an aura with CMC less than or maybe equal to the damage dealt. Like more stuff like that. That like this in theory would have interacted very well against Prism in the past during Monarch Prism. Like I would rather we just get answers to problems than just get rid of it, ban it. Other than scab skins, I mean, just get that card out of the game. But kind of jumped ahead to your Patreon questions. That card is so dumb.
All right. Well, we can get to that eventually. That said, Pheano, I really do appreciate you being on the show, and it has been a long time coming, but it is the first, but definitely not the last. Obviously, love you, buddy, and I do want to just ask, if you do have some pluggables, and now's the time, friends, because I know a lot of people definitely want to hear more from you. They hear from you all the time. You're a very, like I said,
I don't know. People hear too much from me. You can hear me from across the convention hall usually.
I hear you exactly. I know that part. Definitely. But I do recommend that you are such a unique
person. During my game with Josh Lau at calling Charlotte, we had to have like 4 judges run over and yell at us to shut the F up.
It was a fun game.
Yeah. Did I ever tell you about the wet kiss story from that?
Oh, well, now we're going to hear it.
Okay, I guess we have thing to use for this ending segment. I need to do like have you ever seen like the Dromai stories where you like animate a story or something like that? I need to do one of these. This is just one of my favorite all-time gaming moments.
I'm excited for this. I never heard this.
During Patreon time, there's going to be some extra lore about Indy also. We're going to get to that in a minute. So I'm against Josh Lau. This is the first tournament I'm playing Dromai in. This is going back to that conversation earlier. Learned Dromai for those couple weeks leading up to Nationals. Didn't do well in Nationals. Went to play the calling. I'm currently... It is like one of the last rounds of day 2. I'm on the bubble for making top 8 right now. And I have never played Dory in my life before this event as Dromai. Josh is now my 3rd Dory of the weekend. And I'm playing against Josh, and he's like, "Oh, like how you played this match before? Oh, how'd it been?" And I was like, "This is actually. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. This is the end of the game. No. Okay, I'm gonna come back to that in a second. So I'm playing against Josh. We get to the end of the game. I've gone crazy with dragons. I've chipped away at his life total. He gets to this board state where he's like, I just have to go for it, balls to the walls. If I can't get through here, game over. He goes, I think it's Valor, the 1-for-3 on hit go again pump, and then another 3 power pump, swing Dawnblade. I block 9 on it. He then plays a reaction pump for 3. I play Sink Below. And then he tanks. He tanks for a while. He's like kind of muttering to himself, searching through everything. This is a long tank. I'm a talker in case you didn't notice. So I start tanking with him. So I'm like, so your last card is singing Steelblade, right? He's like, yeah. So then I try figuring out the line with him of what is he supposed to search for here? Do you still have this in your deck? Are you through all of your 1-for-3 pumps? Could you grab a route here? And he's like, no, I boarded out my other 2 routes. I'm only playing 1 route in this matchup. And we're like going through every card he could search here. And I'm like, yeah, I think I agree with the line that you didn't want to take, but you think it's your only line. I think this is it. You have to go for Glint, shuffle, and draw one of 2 twinnings and go for it from there. I think that's your only play also. And he's like, all right, we ball. And it's like maybe like 30, 35 card deck. So it's like very unreasonable to actually hit there. But the game's over if he doesn't like go get through here. I just kill him on the crackback basically, and the game's over. So he does it, shuffles up, presents the deck to me to cut. And I'm like, do you want me to give the deck a wet kiss for good luck? He's like, no, just like do it normal. I'm like, wet kiss or nothing. He's like, fine. And then Ethan hands me a water bottle to wet my parched lips before giving the deck a kiss. I give it I pulled my face mask down, sloppy kiss on the top of it, put it down, and we both grab the corner of the top card and flip it together. And it's the twinning. And we're like table 1 of the calling, and we have like a big crowd watching. Everyone goes nuts. So everyone's screaming. This is one of the judges come over and start yelling at us. They're like, "Why is everyone screaming?" They tell us to shut the F up. And Josh is like, "Oh my god, I actually hit the twinning. Oh my god." He's just in such disbelief. Play the twinning. Swing again. Okay. Block with furnace and sink. You had it the whole time? Yes, none of your decisions mattered. And he's just, this soul leaves his body, and he just scoops. He's just like, whatever. And I just
Poor
see him
Josh.
like a zombie later in the day, and he's just so dejected still hours later. And I call him over to talk about something else. I'm like, Josh, wet kiss Dory, and he turns around and looks at you, son of a bitch.
That is a memory for sure. If I'm gonna take one thing out of that, it's the fact that even at the highest table with the highest stakes and some of the best players in the world, there is still that camaraderie and the fun that can be had in those high leverage games and those high leverage situations where you're just like, no, let's figure this out. I want to see how this goes too. Like, trust me, when I get blown up, but like miraculously or majestically, and like it's happened to me. Like I have had the rug pulled from under me because I've done the whole thing where I'll present what I believe is a clear cut, like balls to the walls, full nuts lethal, and I will just like put my card down and then sit back and just be like, I'm just waiting for the fist bump. Like I'm there, the sleeve comes up, we're ready to just go ahead, and then they come out with this miraculous kind of whole reinforce the line and this and that, and you're like, what the just happened here? Like that is like, trust me, when you're on the bad end of it, I'm sure Josh was there and was like, that was incredible to see. But yeah, there's a little bit of Did you see the picture of Peter blowing me up at the Realm thing? I believe that was a while ago, but yeah.
It was like turn 173 damage. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
We were laughing and joking about it. It was so ridiculous. Like, I'm usually at these events to like have a good time, play great games, and have fun with my opponent. Like,
not here. No, that was not. Especially Peter. Peter can like manifest lethal out of thin air sometimes. It's impressive, but that'll do it. So Pheano, where can we find you on the internet for those who want to get more of your music?
Pheano Black on all my socials. The big ones that I use is Twitter and YouTube. Twitter, you can catch my hot takes and shit posting, and YouTube, probably also hot takes and shit posting for the most part, but sometimes strategy content. I try to post some serious stuff on there, like deck techs and stuff, and like guide videos and things like that. I do some Patreon stuff too. Like, had a Dromai guide on there that was I thought was pretty good. A little useless now, but
it exists. You put the work in, and that's what matters. So I do implore everybody to go check out Pheano Black on all the different media sites that you can. Because what you get here
for all the new subs.
Oh, look at that! Look at that! That was free. You didn't even have to. That was a freebie for everybody, and that is a Pheano Black guarantee that if you do go and check out his content, he will, with your permission, kiss you wherever you may be. All right,
I mean, that's going to be on the Metacarpus nudes for sure.
Exactly. That's easily a tier 2 benefit, but a tier 3 benefit is for our patrons who are going to be catching the Go Again segment with Pheano Black, where I'm going to ask him such questions as like, hey Pheano, what's a mistake that you wish that you could take back? Who could reliably make you laugh? How about this? Who inspires you, Pheano Black? I'm going to ask him all of these questions on the Go Again. So you can check out that. It comes out on Sundays on Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/instantspeed, you can go ahead and get hooked up with that. For as little as $2 a month, you could help me keep the lights on here at Instant Speed. Besides that, big ups to our sponsor, The Realm Games. So go to therealmgamingnetwork.com. Check them out. Go get hooked up. Instant 5 is 5% off your order at The Realm Games. Don't forget that. And I'm going to do a giveaway because The Realm...
Estate.
What's that?
Free real estate. 5 off?
5.
Oh, You're practically losing money not going there right now.
Hey, would you rather give that money to the government? No.
I mean, I'd rather give it to your $2 Patreon.
Bam! There you go. Use that, save that money, get hooked up with Patreon, and then, hey, you're making money. Look, this is all freebies. This is a financial podcast now. Absolutely. So, and last but not least, I do want to, again, give a shout out to the patrons for the support, but there is a giveaway. Realm gave me $10 of store credit to give away on this program, and to do so, to enter, in the comments of this video on YouTube, tell me where do you think the new Illusionist will fare? Now, I get it. We got not many clues about what the power level of this hero is going to be. But where's Enigma? Tell me what your thoughts are on Enigma in the comments here. And on the next episode, I will choose a winner and hook you up with $10 of store credit to use at the Realm Gaming Network. Pheano, you are a legend. And there are so much to say, none of which can be put in a PG-related podcast. So we will have to have these conversations in person. I love you, buddy. It's nice to have you on the show, man.
Love you too.
Awesome. Well, friends, thank you so much for listening to the Instant Speed Podcast. Don't forget to check out the Patreon Tier 3 Go Again segment on Sunday. And for everyone else, you are not losing if you're learning, so keep playing the game. We'll see you next week on Instant Speed. Bye.
You know, learning begins with L.
Well, I